Good morning, everybody. We'll just give a couple of minutes for people to arrive and to sign in. Okay, good morning, everybody. It's a couple of minutes after 10. So thank you ever so much for joining us this morning for the third in our series of webinars around financial planning and analysis. The theme of this particular webinar is FP&A complexity made simple. Profit Ann's mission in life really is to give our clients the maximum return on investment in FP&A transformation. Just a little bit of admin before we start. I've muted everybody, but if you need to speak or we'll have Q&A at the end, or by all means raise a hand or send a message. So let's carry on. Just a little bit about myself. As you can see from the grey hair on the video, the picture here is a few years earlier than that, and I've been spent about 20 years as a CFO in mainly medium-sized companies, but as you can see there, qualified with PwC. I spent some time with British Petroleum. And then in the last sort of 25 years of my career, I've been focusing on enterprise performance management. I had a number of roles. On the whole, they've been delivery, that's delivering projects in enterprise performance management. But there's also been one or two quite commercial roles, like running a team of distributors around the world for a software company. So let's focus on FP&A. I'm also an accountant, as you saw, and I think something I've realized over many years as we, the accountants, like to produce reports with lots of numbers and hopefully some graphs on. But actually, end users of reports don't normally like numbers, and they find them, the more there are, the more confusing they become. So the first thing I think we should do is, oh, by the way, KISS, if you haven't come across it before, means keep it simple, silly. And I think we tend to make FP&A too complicated. So the first thing I'd strongly recommend is you focus your reporting on 5 key metrics to run the business. We're not going to talk about that today particularly. That'll be the subject of another webinar. What we will talk about is another key thing, which is a focus on forecast. And like there's a bit of a mantra in retail, which is location, location, location. I believe the mantra for FP&A should be forecast, forecast, forecast. And I'll give you a little story later around why I've come to that conclusion. Then we'll move on to technology, because even with the simplicity of 5 key metrics, you do need some fit for purpose technology, and we'll talk about the conflict between complexity and flexibility across various types of EPM technology. You do need to focus on process as well, and with that comes roles, the roles that people play in the process. That actually is the subject of 2 previous webinars, and we can give you the links to those if you would like to just go through those as well. I'm not really going to focus either on data, although it's always important. What I would say is, again, as accountants, we do tend to make life too complicated, and we love the expression, the devil is in the detail, and the more data, the better. However, in my view, the devil is the detail, and we produce far too much of it. So today, really, we're just going to focus on items 2 and 3 there, which is forecasting and fit for purpose technology. And then after a few slides, we'll move on, and Pavel, who's my colleague, fellow director of Profit and, will do a demonstration, and then we'll finish up with a case study. So I mentioned flexibility versus complexity. And flexibility with your EPM technology is certainly vital, because you need to keep up with the business. What many vendors will sell you is something which handles lots of complexity. We'll come back to that, and I'll fill this matrix in for you later. But if you just keep in mind the need for flexibility, and a bit of a question mark over complexity. So before you do much in the way of transformation, it's really important to understand what it is that the finance team are actually doing. And it's important to identify the things they're doing which are wasteful. That's to say it's a bit of a waste of time, or there's too much effort going into it. Things which are efficient, and things which are genuinely value adding. And the way we describe this, the way you recognize this is in a sort of a traditional finance department. When you look at what your team are actually doing, you find that all they're really doing is data manipulation. There's an enormous amount of effort going into spreadsheet manipulation, data manipulation, and transformation, as copying stuff from one piece of paper or one spreadsheet to another. And all you really manage to produce are, at best, are year-to-go forecasts, which is sort of actual plus budget, which, given that the budget is probably derived 12 months ago, is highly unreliable. And if you do attempt forecasts, you'll find that you're being forced to make some pretty unreliable assumptions, because you just don't have the forecast processes and the data available. But you are under time pressure from, say, your CEO to deliver something, so you end up making some pretty unsafe assumptions. And that's what I'd call a traditional finance department. Not too bad is what we call transitional. And in these processes, you find that quite a lot of effort's gone into automating the process. You get quarterly reforecasts are cranked out. Often they're still only year to go. So, for instance, 6+6 or 9+3. They're probably included in the report pack, nevertheless. But a reforecast to the planning horizon is often pretty rare. And what do I mean by planning horizon? If you take, say, oil exploration, their planning horizon might be 20, 30, even 40 years, because they're making massive investments in oil fields. Whereas maybe in an IT or a technology arena, you might have a planning horizon of maybe even only 1 or 2 years, which is how often you need to renew your software. Moving on to the third case, this is where in my opinion, this is where we need to get to. We need to focus on outcomes. We need to be forecasting, and I call this being a fortune teller. And the roles that you'll see your team undertaking here include some predictive analysis. You'll find that your tools, your technology is connected to, say, operational planning in production or sales forecasting, which uses the CRM system. And everybody in the organization talks about the process. Everybody understands process and they talk about it. And that's what we call a truly transformational finance or FP&A department. So let's move on to forecasting. The green boxes represent finance processes. So here we've got, if you like, the traditional process, which is to report historic performance. So a word of warning, I think, about that. So I can recall being a CFO of a medium-sized manufacturing company, and I used to break my neck once a month to produce a report pack. I'd regularly be in the office at 10 or 11 o'clock at night on the deadline, trying to crank it out. And on one occasion, the following day, having spent half of my life on this blasted thing and sorted out all sorts of problems with the transaction records, I went to the CEO, who had a bit of time to read it, and he said, "Well, thanks, Steve, but do you think you could stop reporting error correction?" And I said, "What do you mean by that?" He said, "Well, you're talking about the fact that we got an accrual wrong last month and we've corrected it this month, and that's created variances." And he said, "What's more, I know what the actuals are because I placed the order. So I know we placed an order for marketing spend a month ago, and that we're now over budget on marketing spend. I know that already. What I want to know is your best view of the future." So that was quite an eye-opener from a non-financial CEO. So that's what got me thinking, well, actually, what I really need to focus on is producing a regular forecast. So this is why I'm saying forecast, forecast, forecast. And if you manage to do your forecasts on a regular basis, say at least quarterly, some companies these days are even doing a live forecast, which means it's any changes in the business are immediately updated and the technology allows that. Then if you do that, then when the CEO or a director comes to you for some analysis on a scenario, say a new product set or a new company even, you've got the baseline which is your best view of the future to do your scenarios on. And let's face it, decisions are about what's going to happen in the future. They're not about the past. And because you've got this practice, let's call it, of looking at the future, your plan, your budget should become pretty easy. So you can base that on it. So the key process here is forecasting. Let's quickly deal with technology. So this is the traditional enterprise performance management architecture coming up here. And on the left, you can see that basically the enterprise resource planning systems, ERP systems. And the traditional ERP vendors are pretty good at these transaction systems, the general ledger, the CRM, and maybe some other systems like manufacturing control. But when we come to do EPM, the first thing we'll need to do is to buy some software which transforms that data. It could aggregate it, it could map it, it could even change it completely, change some values. And it could be data services or other industry ETL tools. And we'll also need to buy some software to have a data warehouse or a data mart, which might be Teradata or something like that. And then now we need to do some financial modeling, and there's, the traditional EPM architecture would have you buy some modeling tools, financial modeling tools. But you realize that actually for planning, we need to do some remote data gathering and some manual data input from managers around the world, around the country, and that will need another piece of software. And then we get to the reporting, and you'll have to buy yet another piece of software, often with some sort of related database, so separate from the data warehouse, to do some mapping and stuff like that. And that should enable you to do your multidimensional slice, dice, drill down, and graphs. So as you can see, the traditional approach comes with multiple software purchases. They need stitching together. Sometimes they don't talk to each other properly. It requires some more investment. Basically, it takes a long time and is costly. Let's talk about transformational EPM architecture. And notice we're back to the green heading here for transformational. Well, we, Profit and, have selected Anaplan, and I make no bones about that as being the best tool on the market, because it deals with all of those functional components in one piece of software. And that's what I call simplicity and value for money. In the sort of the total cost of ownership, when you work it out, is a fraction of the traditional ERP vendors. And finally, Anaplan is designed for and completely works in the cloud. And one of the big benefits of that is that there's no expensive software upgrades. They just happen in the background by Anaplan. So back quickly to our flexibility versus complexity matrix, which I promised I would come back to. So in the sort of traditional FP&A world, most people, an enormous number of people, are still using Excel for FP&A, for all sorts of reporting, budgeting, planning. But as I hope you recognize, Excel comes with it's not a genuinely enterprise-wide tool. It's designed as a desktop tool. And when you try to use it in an enterprise-wide environment, you get all sorts of version control problems. You get people copying over formulae so that it doesn't add up. And really, it is a very, very poor tool for enterprise-wide reporting of any sort. However, it is flexible, and that's really where its strength is. If you want to do some prototyping, it's a good tool to use. Because of that, the ERP vendors have come along and said, well, we can solve that problem, and we'll give you a genuinely enterprise-wide solution. And it'll handle all the complexity that you can throw at it. And that's probably true. But the problem is that it's owned by IT, and it comes, which makes it sort of intransigent or difficult to change. It is complex. There's lots of scripting and stuff like that. And what that ends up with is people sort of finance loses the will to live with it. And they say, okay, I can't cope with that anymore. I'm going to go back to Excel, or I do the things that the IT department are being slow to do or refusing to do. We'll just do it with Excel. And what the reality is that those tools don't handle complexity, and it really just leaves the finance departments in the traditional world with some very expensive EPM tools which are not genuinely handling flexibility. And that's why we strongly recommend Anaplan, because it can be modeled by a good finance person. Anybody that can model in Excel can model in Anaplan, and it does handle the complexity. So if you're looking at EPM tools now, I strongly recommend that you put Anaplan at least on the list. Okay, that's me done. I'm going to hand over to my colleague Pavel, who's going to give you a quick demonstration of Anaplan, and we'll come back after he's finished and just do a quick wrap up with a case study. I'm just going to stop sharing. Okay, can you share, Pavel?
Just put that screen up. Yeah, can you enable me to share? At the moment, I have a message saying host disabled participating.
Yeah, Grace, you need to do that.
Thanks. Grace, I have a message saying host disabled participants share.
Yeah, Steve, I think that I gave you host, so you need to make Pavel host.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that should work. How about that?
You are now host. Yes, perfect. Thank you, Steve. Excellent. Can you see my screen okay now?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so referring to what Steve was showing, I'll now put that in practice and actually show how this could look like in Anaplan. So what we see is an application that would cover the processes that we spoke about, what typical finance would do, where we create our plans, we report the performance, we predict the future based on history or more advanced algorithm, and we can play with the scenarios. All that is underpinned with managing data. Unlike other technologies, this management of the data, of our hierarchies and transformation of the data, validation of the data can be done also in Anaplan, which is a great advantage and over what has been done in the past. That actually finance users can trigger the load, do the validation. In the past, it would be done by IT, who not necessarily understand the background behind the data. But let's start with planning, how this could look like. In this example, we will take a role of executive person of this company trying to set the targets for the next year. So what we see is our past performance. We can, on the global level, now plan the next year targets that has ability for us also to submit those numbers and a concept of workflow, which I'll come back in a minute. And that is pushing basically the targets that I'm setting for the company to our regions based at first iteration based on the priority sales. So based on this, it set the target for EMEA for 3.6. I think we can achieve a bit better. So I'll say maybe the performance in EMEA will be less than last year. So I'm going to actually decrease it by 10%. But instead, I do want to hold the target, for example, for North America. And that will put a difference in the others. Let me just actually change that to -5. I will increase the targets for APJ and 10%. So we can play around with those numbers and arrive with the right target. They can have ability to submit those numbers and push them down. After allocating the target to our region EMEA, we can now split it down to our products or divisions or whichever the way we want to slice those targets down. And again, we have the same ability to override and adjust. And when we submit those numbers, it's refreshing all the contacts graphs on the page. And we've concluded our process here. And that process, it can be tracked through the workflow summary. that is basically helping the departments to track all our efforts and different steps. We want to do the revenue top-down planning, then we want to do the bottom-up OPEX, balance sheet, cash flow. We can set start and target date, we can put responsible people for it and track the status. But going back to the story, let's remember about this target of 3.5 that has been broken down to a division for 2.5 in EMEA. And now we'll take a role of EMEA consulting and advisory manager who now receives this target and needs to plan his bottom-up plan. So this is the target. So this is kind of a beauty of this concept of connected planning. Different people involved in planning can actually interact with the same tool, work on the same data, but have a specific cut of the process of the dashboards given to them. I'll change. What we see here is a slice of the organizational hierarchy. I'm a consulting advisory manager. I'll just change to the budget, and I'll change that to the full year. So we have also, of course, also ability to not only use that for the budgeting, but also for forecasting and ability to analyze it by month. But what we're seeing is our target, our bottom-up sales, with the ability to analyze it with different options, depending on how confident we feel we will close certain projects with certain clients. So in this example, this company is providing consulting, is providing consulting to projects to different clients that roll up to my region. Within my region, I can create new projects. I can through this input form that will require me to put the required data that we can see on the screen. We can either use that form or use this table to put those information in. We have various options in searching, filtering, pivoting this like in Excel. Everything kind of made available to end user to make sure that this is simple and they can do their part of the process as fast as possible. Once we set the project, we can now plan the people. We can add consultants. We can, in this case, we can plan number of days. Again, this is all refreshed. The rate cards are applied per different consultant, and they are contributing to the target. What's another nice example of that is a check here for, okay, I'm pretty confident the market growing much faster and than everyone expected or top management expected. So I think I'm confident I can grow the market to 4.3 based on the real information about the upcoming pipeline of the projects. So I'm confident I can deliver that. But my current FTE is 27. It looks like I need to hire 12 people in order to keep the utilization a bit down. So it takes us to a story of actually creating and managing now my team and creating higher requests. That utilization can be tracked through various graphs as well. So you've got this visual side helping you to navigate to this analysis. So yeah, I've got this problem. I can now go to my FTE planning, or that could be again a HR manager that we could be doing. And this is again another piece of the process, different roles that could be doing that. And as a delivery manager, I could be requesting a new position. My existing roles loaded usually from HR system, and I can add a new position. And I can also notify the HR about this through the notification message box, and that HR manager, for example, can receive the email, and they can approve or disapprove the requested new position. So very quickly, what we've touched on is creating budgets, creating a top target, bottom-up revenue target, creating costs. and now it's time for kind of going now within the year. Let's be in a position where we're actually going, say, we're in the mid-year, where we have some actuals loaded, and we need to now see how we are against this budget. Again, you could have this nicely facilitated through a dashboard with the key performance indicators. We are slightly behind the targets, so let's actually look into the various analysis more closely. You can analyze this by month, and maybe functional controllers would be doing that. Usually, it's their job to analyze this month by month and explain the differences with either what we can facilitate in Anaplan is a drop-down box to explain the variance, or a simple comment to do that. There is also ability to comment on the chat box, so all the people actually can start collaborating through the tool rather than sending this to emails or Teams and so on. So all that kind of history can be kept here in the tool. So everything to drive this collaboration, single platform, keep all the plans together, keep all the data together in one place, and driving that connected planning story. Lastly, I wanted to touch upon kind of some what-if scenario, as explained in the initially when we were planning our projects, we had this probability factor, and that was that gives us an option to set a different probability percentage to how likely we think those new projects are going to be translating into real revenue into our FY21 plan. And based on this, it will produce us 3 different scenarios. So if I'm not actually quite confident about well planning for that particular customer, I will degrade that actually to 50, and that will automatically update throughout the models, and it will also affect this kind of bottom-up calculation that we've seen in the other places as well. So hopefully this demonstration has shown you the breadth of Anaplan and what it can do. It can, you know, it can be serving finance planning, but what clients also do is they see it as a basic modeling platform, and this extends beyond finance to help sales in their operational planning, setting targets for the salespeople. It helps on the supply chain side with production capacity planning, with demand planning, anything that involves a lot of data, a lot of users, some calculations that that are needed to predict the future. This is something that all our clients are doing, and they're putting all those models together, and they sit on the same platform, you know, giving you a great benefit of leveraging the latest technology available. I think that's all from me for now.
You make me host again, Pavel.
I think I need to make you a host, and I think we have to do that.
If you go to participants and your name and then more, it should give you the option to.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's good, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks, Pavel. So we're just going to wrap up the presentation now. So just a quick word on return on investment. So really, again, just a story about return on investment. One of the things we do for our clients is to carry out an evaluation of the financial processes, the FP&A processes, so plan, budget, report, actual, scenarios, forecast. And we did this recently for a company turning over about 50 million. Or a set of companies turning over 50 million, and in a couple of hours with the group financial controller, we estimated very quickly that on cost reduction alone, that's greater efficiency, we could save about £125,000 per annum in the FP&A processes. And that's really give or take, that's about a 1 year payback. Within a year of investing in the software, Anaplan software, and some assistance with building the enterprise performance management system, there'd be money back, and everything beyond that would be return on investment. And that's ignoring the value that the finance team is going to add to the business as a whole by removing errors, by increasing the planning speed. Maybe you're taking typically 12 to 16 weeks to do a plan. It's becoming possible now with the technology to do it in 2 to 4 weeks. And then all of this impacts on sort of profitability. And just imagine if I'm not sure what that company's profitability was, but imagine it was 5 million and we had a 1% increase in profitability. That's immediately another 50,000 per annum improvement in profitability. And finally, let's talk about a case study. So this is Souza, which is an open source software developer and support company. They came to us in 2019, late 2019, saying they wanted a 3-year plan by the end of January. So in about 6 man weeks, we delivered a 3-year plan using Anaplan software. This is a sort of, at the time, about 500 million turnover business with operating companies all over the world. And that was received very well by the board. They then, the chief sales officer saw this and thought, well, what I really need is I need to be able to, at the moment I have to wait weeks for my sales operations team to produce sales forecasts by extracting data from Salesforce.com, the CRM system, aggregating it, transforming it in spreadsheets, etc., etc. What I really need is the ability to have a daily view of my committed sales from my 50 or 80 account execs around the world. In other words, I want to be able to do revenue forecasting pretty well at the push of a button. So we basically connected Anaplan into the Salesforce.com, and we get a regular data update from them, and that produces revenue forecasting. The sales director was happy with that and said, well, okay, let's do the country revenue country targets. So there's targets and quota management we managed to do by the autumn. So the daily sales forecast was part of the revenue forecasting. And as you can see, all these things are connected to each other. And then they went on to deliver a really thorny problem for them, which was the sales commission management. Meanwhile, finance began to extend use of Anaplan into annual plans and budgets. And just recently, they've been looking at replacing the current monthly reporting tool with Anaplan. So this is, a real connected planning example where Anaplan is being used as the real platform for enterprise performance management. Okay, 5 minutes to go, I think. Time for some Q&A if you have any questions to ask. And you'll see a slide here with some of our clients. We work basically all over Europe. The blue countries are countries where we have projects. Any questions? Sure, I see that. Chat, in chat. Okay. So there's no questions at the moment.
Hi, Steve. It's Spiros here.
Hi, Spiros.
I've got one of the questions that's been asked by a lot of the people I speak to is that they're kind of a little bit reluctant in adopting this new technology because they have a fear that they might not be able to understand it or make it work or implement it. And therefore, sort of this prolongs really hanging on to the Excel spreadsheets in order, to continue doing their financial planning. So one question I get is sort of what sort of level of skill and expertise do I need to have in my traditional team in order to be able to jump to the transitional and the other levels that you spoke about?
Okay, thanks, Spiros. That's indeed a very common question, and it's quite understandable. We've all been brought up on Microsoft Excel on spreadsheets, and it's sort of our comfort zone for doing anything with that needs tables of numbers, and so and then some people become quite expert at sort of building processes, let's call it, in Excel using macros. So back to what skills you need to implement a product like Anaplan, then basically if you've got people who have got reasonable, I don't mean super skills like macros, but if you've got reasonable skills in Excel and you build Excel models, those people will take to Anaplan very, very quickly, because the scripting language is it's like writing it's a bit similar to Excel. The formula and the functions are similar, very similar to Excel. It's all point and click, and it's not really, it's designed for all ranges of companies. So we've got companies with a very small level of turnover, maybe 10, 15 million, right up to a 2 or 3 billion pounds of turnover a year. It's basically, if your people are reasonable at Excel, they will take to Anaplan very quickly and love it.
Yep, thanks very much for that, Steve.
Thank you. Let me just check and see if there's any other questions anywhere. I don't think there are. So I think that's it. Thank you all very much for attending. The recording of this will be available before too long, and if you want to look at previous recordings, they're also of webinars, they're also available, and I'll hope to see you again on the next one. Thank you very much.
Thank you.